Today we're going to go into our foiling techniques, but I do want to cover a few things prior to starting on our mannequin work. The first thing is what you're going to be learning today and what you're going to be seeing me show you is very basic, and this is just so that you start to get the feel of what your foils should feel like as far as taking your partings and your slices and your weaving off of your partings. So understand that we're not talking necessarily about the pattern and how we have the hair sectioned off today. We're just talking about the foil and the placement. So the first thing you're going to do is go ahead and section off about 2.5 to 3 inch wide mohawk section from center front to center nape in the back. And the two sides that are left out, you want to get that up and out of your way. And if you notice, all that hair is out of the way. I don't have any ponytail hanging out because that hair can get in your way as you're beginning to work in your foils. The first thing I'm going to show you is a slicing technique. And hopefully we can get in really close to this and you'll be able to see what we're looking for. I'm not going to start in the nape because this is a very challenging area, so I want you to have some success with this foiling technique today. So we're going to start about the occipital area. I'm going to come in. I'm going to be using my metal tip rat tail comb. You definitely get one in your kit, maybe not quite like this. If you want to go out, this is I think a silk comb by Cricut. I really like this one because the metal tip on it is a little bit thicker, a little bit heavier weight. So I'm going to come into this occipital area and I want to make a nice clean parting all the way across. It's very important that it's a nice, clean, straight line because that's going to set you up for success through the rest of the foils. The hair that I'm not working with is going to be completely out of my way. I don't want this. You may be working on a mannequin that has longer hair. If that's the case and this wants to fall over, use another clip and clip it out of your way. We're going to be working with our foils, and this is pre-cut foil. You probably have some foil in your classroom that are larger sheets, probably about twice this width, that you will fold in half and not cut but tear in half so that they're nice and clean. But you want those nice straight lines. If this were tore and had pieces out either the top or the side, that wouldn't be great or ideal for foiling. So once I have that nice clean straight parting in the occipital area in the back, and as I'm looking at this, it's not quite where I'd like it to be, so I'm going to go back in. Understand, I know that it's not going to be perfect because the hair, the way it's laid in the mannequin, is not necessarily in a straight line, but I want you to work on those partings and making them as neat as possible. So I'm going to come in and take about 1/4 inch wide section. And if you look on your cutting combs, you have 1 inch at this point. So I want you to think 1/4 of that. It's about that wide. This is very important when you're doing your foil work. So I've got my 1/4 inch parting. Now what I'm going to do for a slicing technique is I'm going to come in and slice just a nice thin part off of my 1/4 inch parting. So that here is nice and thin. You can't necessarily see on my gloved hand, but if I put my arm there, you'll see how thin that hair is. You want it nice and neat and thin. I always say I would rather see 100 foils in the head with 5 hairs in them than I would to see 5 foils in the hair with 100 hairs in them. The thinner the hair is, the nicer and neater your foil work is. So we're going to place that edge of the foil over our comb. Some people do it where it's facing in. I prefer to do it that way. Some people do it where it's behind the comb. So I'm going to put that foil over the edge of my comb. I'm going to come in, put the tail of my comb right on that parting line. I'm going to pull that hair over. Okay, I'm not going to let it go. I am going to push that foil down to the scalp so that that foil is curving with the scalp. I'm going to take my color applicator brush. Remember that you get different brushes in your kit. This one is a little bit wider, and if you'll notice, the bristles on it are wider also. This is great for a basic color application and a relaxer application. Your thinner brushes, a little bit smaller, are great for highlight applications or working with your foils. So when you come in, the first thing you're going to do, and you notice I haven't let go of that foil yet and I haven't let go of the hair. What I'm going to do is apply my product under the edge of the foil, and while that brush is on my foil, I'm going to come in and hold that foil in place with my thumb and index finger of my left hand. I'm going to make sure that product is on there, and I'm still staying away from the edge. I put my hand underneath the foil, and I'm going to work that product through to the ends. Now what I'm not doing is coming in and combing that hair with the product. You see what happens when I do that? I'm coming in and using that brush and laying it flat on my foil and laying that product on the hair. So once I have it through to the ends, I'm going to come back. I'm going to push that foil up slightly. I'm going to make sure that it's nice and snug to the scalp. Then I'm going to go back and apply that product up to about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge of the foil. And the reason why we want to keep it away from the edge of the foil is any of your products that have any type of alkalizing agent, whether it's ammonia in color or whether it is persulfate salts in your lighteners, what's going to happen is it's going to cause that product to swell. If I put that any closer than 1/8 of an inch away from the edge of the foil, that product's going to swell. It's going to go over the edge of my foil, and it's going to cause what we call bleed marks, or spots in the hair where that product has gotten where it shouldn't have. So once I've laid the product on the hair and I've got the foil in place, one of the things you need to think about as you go into fold is a lot of people, the reason why that foil will drag down from the hair is because when they go to fold it, they're actually pulling it down from the inside as they're flipping up. So I want you to keep in mind and think, this will all come eventually one day when you've got a lot of practice with this. It'll all come really natural, but you need to really think about it as you're working right now. So when you go to fold that foil up, don't pull and don't twist. All you want to do is literally take the ends of that foil and fold them up. What I want to do is make sure that foil covers everything that's underneath it. And what I'm going to do is really lightly, understand I'm not pressing hard. I was just using my comb instead of my hand to place that foil so that it sticks to the hair underneath. I don't want to come in and make it really flat because you're going to squeeze that product up. I just want to make it stick to the hair underneath. I'm going to fold one more time. You'll learn later on. There's we use a couple of different foiling methods. This is the first one I want you to do this and practice this and get successful with it, and then you'll move on later on in your school career to learn other techniques. So we're going to do this one more time. I'm going to let her down a little bit because I'm a little short. I'm going to come in. I'm going to move up about another 1/4 of an inch. So when you're practicing this, I want you to do your first one and then have your instructor come around and take a look at it. See where you have areas you can improve, or just to let you know that you did a great job with your first foil. So again, I've taken a 1/4 of an inch parting. I'm going to come into that 1/4 of an inch, and I'm just going to really, really thinly slice across the top. Okay. Think about how much hair I'm wanting in that foil. This side seems a little heavier. There's nothing wrong with the amount of hair, so I'm just going to add a little bit to the opposite side. What I don't want you to do is that if it's not perfect, don't drop it and then redo it, because that just wastes time. What you need to learn to do is just add more hair or take more hair out, depending on what you need to do. So I've gone in. That hair's pretty even. We're going to go through this a little bit quicker now. I'm going to come in, apply that foil right at the parting, pull that hair nice and snug over it. I want to curve my ends of my foil so that it sets with the curve of the head, because we're kind of putting a square object on something that's round. You're going to apply your product under the edge of the foil, and what we're doing is getting that hair to stick to the foil. If you notice, I don't have my hands there. I'm not holding it. It may slide a little bit while you're doing this, and that's fine. Again, I'm going to show you that technique to get it back up close to the scalp. We're applying that product on the edge of the foil, or on the foil, sorry. Working that down to the ends. I'm going to come in, hold that foil in place, put my thumb and index finger back on the two corners of my foil, and I'm going to come in and work that product up to about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge of the foil. Again, we want to do that because that product's going to swell as it sits in the foil. So we're going to come up, we're going to do one fold up, really nice and lightly. Make that foil, that top foil, stick to the hair underneath. And then we're going to fold in half again. So let's fold up once and then fold up one more. So this is just to get you in the practice of creating nice straight partings and giving you a little practice with foil work. As I work on this one, I want to mention something as I work towards the bottom of the hair. Again, I'm laying that brush, that color brush, flat. I'm not combing it through the hair, I'm laying it flat. If you're working with a hair that is longer than the mannequin's hair that I'm working with now, and you have to get down in here, what I want you to think about is avoiding applying product at least on the last inch, inch and a half of the foil. Because if I have product all the way down here and then I go to fold up, that product may get on the hair that I don't necessarily want lightened. And that, again, that's another way that causes bleed marks. So we've went over two different things. One is that when we're applying this product close to the edge of the foil, we're keeping it at about 1/8 of an inch away, and that is to keep from bleeding. And then we also talked about keeping product off the end of that foil. If you do happen to get product on the end of that foil, don't worry about wiping it off. Just simply fold it up about 1 inch and you have a nice clean area. And then you go up and fold that in half. So again, I want that foil to just stick to the hair underneath. And then I'm going to fold up one more time. Okay, so I want you to practice this method of slicing through your whole mohawk section. Once you've done that, I want you to periodically, as you're working on this, have your instructor come over and check and see where you are. Let you know maybe what things you need to correct and what things you need to work on. Again, this is just practice. If you finish it up, then you can do it again. There's never too much practice. This is going to be your money maker when you get in the salon. So now we're going to start off with our weaving technique. Again, I just want to make a few reminders. This isn't necessarily about the pattern we're doing as far as what area we're working on. It is about the method of actually pulling that hair out and weaving it and making it lay in the foil nice and neat. As you advance in your cosmetology career and your cosmetology school career, you will get a little bit more advanced techniques and parting patterns and those types of things. So right now we're just working on the neatness and the ability to make those nice clean partings and getting it to lay in the foil nice. So just like we did with the slices, we took about 1/4 of an inch section. What we're going to do now is, once you have that 1/4 of an inch section, just like your slice, you're going to take a nice, neat, clean slice off the top of that. We're working in the crown right now on this mannequin, which is a little bit thicker, and you'll notice by that slice. But once we take that slice, you're going to come in and weave. Now, people weave in different ways, and I want to show you a couple of the ways that you'll see that happen. One is people do a circle as they're weaving, and there's nothing wrong with that. You're going to end up with a nice weave. Some people you will see methodically going in and weaving up and down and making sure those sections are perfect. There's nothing wrong with that, but I want you to get into the habit of when you're doing weave foils or highlights in the hair, you're not looking for consistent, perfect areas every time. You're looking for a highlight. And that may mean that I have a smaller piece of hair here with just a slightly bit larger. And I don't mean like you want a big difference, but I don't want you to be so focused on getting it perfect as I do you just creating a nice section of hair to create highlights on. So you may need to do this a couple of times to practice before you actually put it in your foil. Again, I dropped a little piece here, and I don't want you to go in and lay everything back down and reweave it. I want you to just pick up here where you need to if it's not consistent, or take hair out where it's not needed. Same method of folding that foil over the edge of the comb, applying that tail of the comb over the edge of the foil, or sorry, not over the edge of the foil, but right on that parting of the hair, holding that hair nice and snug over your foil, and then coming in and applying that product under the edge of the foil, laying that color brush flat so that you are saturating the hair, not combing the hair, because what can happen is you can actually remove product from the hair if you use it more like a comb. Work that down to the ends, go back, hold those edges of the foil, and work that product up into about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. Again, the reason why we want to make sure that product is not right on the edge of the foil is due to swelling. Anytime you're working with a product that has an alkalizing agent in it, such as ammonia or your lighteners, those types of things, you want to understand that you're going to get some swelling in there. And if that happens and you're too close to the edge of the foil, you're going to get bleed areas, or areas that product has swollen and gotten on the hair or on the scalp where you don't want it. I want to cover one more thing again. So I laid this foil up over the edge, and what I want that foil to do is I want it to cover up the hair that has product on it. So when I fold it up and you see me do this, all I'm doing is making sure that that hair or that foil is stuck to that hair and that product so that it's closed somewhat. I'm not coming in and smoothing it really straight and making a straight package out of it. I'm going to turn this slightly more towards the camera so you can see that that edge of the foil right here is not pressed down flat, because what's going to happen if I come in and really make this flat, I'm going to push the product away from the hair that is in this fold. So I don't want it folded really tight, so you don't have to have it like envelope tight, okay? You want it nice and neat, but you don't have to have it perfectly straight, okay? So once I've done that first fold over, I'm going to come in and just fold over one more time. Again, I don't want to create a flatness. All I'm doing really lightly, some people are very heavy-handed, and I'm usually very heavy-handed, but I'm not coming in and pressing this against the scalp, because if the more I press this foil packet, the more that product is going to bleed out of the foil. So we're going to go through a few more, and then we'll let you get to work on it. So at the top of the head, some of the things I want to point out, even if you were doing a slicing method all over the top of the head, on a real client, when you get in this crown area, which is usually the area that your client has is a little bit more swirl, or the hair tends to part off naturally, this is the area, even if you're doing a full head of slicing highlights, you'll probably want to do a little bit of a weave in this area, simply because If the hair parts off or separates due to that swirl pattern, you don't want to see a line across there. Well, I don't want to, and I know most clients aren't going to want to. As you work up the head, you're going to tilt your mannequin back some so that it becomes a little bit easier to work on. You don't want to kill yourself. Some of the other things as you work forward on clients, you won't necessarily run into this problem on your mannequin, but on clients as you work forward, most people from this apex area, when I say the high point of the head, that hair has a tendency to fall forward naturally unless they have a major cowlick. So this is where you may want to come in and step around to the front just for the purposes of making your life a little bit easier and not having to fight that hair growth pattern, is stepping around to that front and working from the front to the middle of the apex. I'm going to put a couple more foils in here and we'll come back and I'll show you that. Okay, so that we have worked that weave pattern up into the apex. So I turned the mannequin around to work from front to the apex. The reason for this again is because you're going to have a lot of your clients from the apex area to the front hairline. That hair growth pattern usually comes forward. Instead of fighting that hair growth pattern, you just want to go with it and make your life a whole lot easier. So what I've done is in the center front, I've went ahead and taken off my 1/4 inch parting. So now I'm going to come in and take my nice clean slice off of that 1/4 inch. And then I'm going to come in and weave. So I'm going to check my weave pattern for consistency. Same method with my foil. I'm going to come in. The edge of the foil is folded over my comb. I'm going to pull that hair down over. I'm going to get that foil nice and snug to the scalp. I'm going to come in and apply some product to that hair, make it stick to the foil. Put my hand underneath, work that product down to the ends. You want to avoid that last 1 inch of the foil so that you don't fold up and get bleed marks because of that product on the edge. I'm going to go back, hold the edges of the foil, come in and work that product up to about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. Do your first fold up, and especially in the face, make sure that you get it out of the eyes and fold up a second time. Again, I'm not pressing that down. All I'm doing is curving it down so that it stays out of my way. Come in, take another 1/4 inch parting all the way across. I'm going to check it for evenness and balance. Make sure that it's nice and neat. Sometimes I know that it's frustrating to feel like you need to go back and straighten those partings up, but if you work in nice, neat sections all the time, you won't have to go back and fix anything, and it makes your end result look a lot nicer and neater. So I'm going to come in, take that slice off of that 1/4 inch parting. I'm going to come in and weave. I'm going to check my weave pattern for consistency. It's a little thinner in the middle, so I'm just going to come in, add a little bit of a hair to that. That foil over the edge of my comb. I want to come in and I want to place that comb with that foil on it right in that parting so that it is nice and snug. And if you can get in a little close, you can see here that it's really, really close to the scalp. And you just can't get much closer than that, and you're going to end up with a beautiful end result. Again, you don't want your clients leaving after a foil, whether you're doing a full head or you're doing a retouch or even a partial. You don't want them walking out looking like they have new growth. They come in to get highlights done, and you want to see it, and they want to see it closer to the scalp. So you definitely don't want that 1/2 inch to 1 inch of new growth look because you're just not close enough. Again, this is something you're going to have to practice at, just like your hair cutting and your perm wraps and those kind of things. The more you practice, the more comfortable you will get with this technique, and the better you'll feel about your work as you move along in the program. Just so you know that this is something that you never stop practicing. When you get in the salon, if you're not busy with a client, you need to throw a couple of foils in a mannequin's head and practice. Practice doesn't make perfect, but it makes you much better. I used to use the term practice makes perfect, but I realized that it actually only makes you better. So again, working that product down that foil onto that hair, not combing it with the ends of the color brush, actually laying that color brush flat, going back, working that product up to the edge. And this is one of the things that I didn't address, and I want to address, making sure that I cover it. The reason why when I go into the foil first and I'm applying that below the edge of the foil, about 1/2 inch to 1 inch, is I want that hair kind of stuck to the foil so that I can work that product down through the ends. But also I work a lot of the product off of my color brush so that when I go back to that edge, I'm not using a glob of color or a glob of lightener on my color brush to get close to that edge. So again, fold up once and then fold up again, just laying that foil over so that it curves with the head. So we're going to go through and put a few more foils in this, and then I'm going to come back and show you what your end result should look like. So now we have finished up our weave pattern. So just to kind of do a little bit of a recap, just like we did with the slice, I want you to start around the occipital in the back, only because that nape area is a challenge, and I want you to feel a little bit more successful and get some practice with the technique itself. So I want you to come in, work from occipital up to the apex or that high point of the head, and I want you to turn that mannequin around and work from the very front hairline to the apex. If you see how nice and neat those foils look, they're not bunched up, they're not crumpled up. This is what your work after several times of practice should look like. It may look like this after the first time. Again, if your instructor tells you to come in and do it again, even though you may think you have perfect foil placement, I want you to continue to practice, because this is a skill that takes time to get really, really good at. And I just want you to practice, because again, this is one of those things we want you to be successful, because this is a great source of income when you're in the salon.